Cops have read it. What's the coolest criminal you ever arrested? First year on the job, I catch this call about some drunk genius sending his car off a damn boat ramp. Dude wasn't just speeding either. We figured he hit that thing doing around 50. The car straight up launched like a shopping cart somebody strapped a rocket to, then disappeared into about 20 feet of water. Now here's where my brain just quit. Instead of drowning, this man swims to shore, somehow runs 8 freaking miles. Yeah, 8. To his uncle's place, steals the uncle's tow truck, and drives all the way back. Because apparently this was Plan B, or Plan Z. Hell, I don't know anymore. Then this absolute menace dives back into the lake, underwater, hooks the tow cable onto the axle of the submerged car, climbs out, and floors the tow truck, like physics owes him money. The truck immediately gets yanked straight into the water, too. Watching it was like seeing someone try to rescue a sinking brick by tying another brick to it. Genius. Catastrophically stupid genius. We roll up after someone finally calls it in, and all we can see are 2 sets of headlights glowing underwater, and the very tip of a hood poking out like the lake was smirking at us. Meanwhile, this guy passed out cold on the dock, snoring like he'd just wrapped up a productive Saturday. I still arrested him, obviously, but for about 5 seconds I was almost impressed. Then I remembered paperwork exists, and honestly, that hurt more than whatever hangover he woke up with. Story 2. This one still lives rent-free in my head because it was the weirdest burglary investigation I've ever touched. We started getting calls from homeowners convinced somebody had broken in, except nothing was missing. Actually, the opposite. Kitchens were spotless, laundry was folded, bathrooms looked like they belonged in a hotel. One lady swore she'd left dishes in the sink, came home, and thought she'd accidentally walked into her neighbor's house. Imagine getting robbed by a damn housekeeping service. That's not a crime scene. That's a confused Yelp review. Turns out it was this homeless guy who could pick locks like they were cheap luggage. He'd figure out when people were gone for work, move in for a week, sometimes way longer if nobody noticed, eat a little food, take a shower, crash on the couch, then spend his free time cleaning the place top to bottom, like some reverse raccoon. Instead of digging through your trash, he organized it. The whole thing was so bizarre, it almost sounded fake, but every new report fit the same insane pattern. The only time we actually caught him, he didn't panic. Guy calmly says he's a cleaner who mixed up the address because the front door was left open. Then he pulls out his phone and shows us this whole fake email chain with a client whose address was almost identical. I remember just standing there thinking, are you seriously trying this? The crazy part? It actually held up better than you'd expect. We couldn't tie him to the other houses, and his lawyer poked enough holes in the one case that he walked away with something like 2 weeks in jail. Look, I'm not saying the guy deserved a medal. Breaking into people's homes is still breaking into people's homes. But there's something deeply absurd about chasing a serial burglar whose biggest crime scene clue was vacuum lines in the carpet. It was like trying to arrest Cinderella if she was homeless, sleep-deprived, and had a lockpick set instead of glass slippers. I filled out the report, did my job, and still left wondering how the hell reality keeps coming up with better plots than movies. Story 3. Buddy of mine used to sell hash back in the day, and you'd think he'd spend all that cash on fast cars, gold chains, or something equally dumb. Nope. This lunatic decided reptiles were the investment portfolio. Every dollar went into giant glass habitats, connected by little tunnels, packed with tropical plants, fake waterfalls, climbing branches. The whole place looked like Jurassic Park got squeezed into a suburban living room. Snakes, geckos, monitors, turtles. You'd turn a corner and another scaly little weirdo would just be staring back at you like it paid rent. Eventually the cops kicked the door in, ready for another boring drug bust. Then they actually looked around. The whole mood shifted. Guys were literally yelling down the hallway, "Yo, you gotta come see this." Next thing you know, more officers are wandering through the house like it's some sketchy reptile museum. This was the 90s, so a couple of them even ran back out to grab cameras because nobody would have believed this place otherwise. It was like watching a bunch of hardened cops turn into excited dads at the zoo, except the zoo smelled vaguely like weed. Don't get me wrong, they still hauled him off in cuffs. That part never changed. But for a few minutes, he wasn't just another dealer getting arrested. He was the reptile guy, the dude who somehow built an entire rainforest for cold-blooded freeloaders while making the worst career choices imaginable. That's one hell of a legacy, honestly. Story 4. My uncle was an Oregon State Trooper, and this story still cracks me up because I honestly don't know what the proper police procedure is for weaponized stupidity. He's running radar one afternoon when the gun lights up at almost 60 in a 40. So he's thinking, all right, somebody's about to lose their license. Except, there isn't a car. It's a pack of downhill skateboarders. These absolute lunatics are bombing a long, gradual hill at nearly 60 miles an hour, weaving past actual traffic like the laws of physics had filed for bankruptcy. Cars were getting overtaken by dudes standing on pieces of wood with 4 tiny wheels. That's not transportation anymore. That's a trust fall with gravity. One bad pebble, and you're basically confetti. He gets them stopped at the bottom of the hill, and they're all grinning like this was just another Tuesday. No helmets worth bragging about, no fear, no survival instinct, just enough confidence to make everyone else's blood pressure spike. My uncle said he stood there for a second, trying to decide whether to lecture them or ask where they bought whatever courage they were smoking. In the end, he let them off with a warning. Not because what they did was smart, it absolutely wasn't, but because he couldn't stop laughing at the sheer audacity of it. He said he'd written tickets to people doing dumber things in cars, but watching a bunch of teenagers casually pass traffic on skateboards felt like witnessing evolution hit the undo button. Pretty legendary, assuming you survive long enough to tell the story. Story 5. This goes way back to when I was a rookie in the early 80s, and it's still one of those calls that reminds you how fast a situation can flip on its head. Dispatch sends me to a disturbance. I roll up, and the first thing I see is a guy on the ground while a woman is absolutely unloading on him with a baseball bat. My training kicked in before my brain did. I ran over, got the bat away from her, put her in cuffs, and called an ambulance for the guy. While we're waiting, she's crying her eyes out, telling me, "You don't understand, he raped me last year." I'll admit, my first thought was, this can't be that simple. Calls are messy, emotions run hot, and you learn pretty quickly not to assume anything. So I had dispatch check the guy. A few seconds later, they come back saying he had an outstanding warrant for rape. Then they pulled the old report. Same victim. That was one of those moments where it feels like somebody reached over and flipped the entire scene upside down. The EMTs looked him over, and despite looking like he'd lost an argument with a freight train, he wasn't seriously hurt. I uncuffed her, put the cuffs on him instead, and told her, "Thanks for helping us find him." He skipped the scenic route and went straight to jail. It honestly felt like one of those Monopoly cards coming to life. Go directly to jail. Do not pass go, do not collect $200. Except this wasn't a board game, and for once, an outstanding warrant didn't stay outstanding for very long. Some calls leave you scratching your head. That one left me staring at my report thinking, well, I definitely didn't see that ending coming. Story 6. Not a cop, but this happened to me years ago on Christmas Day, and I'll never forget it. I was already running stupid late for my night shift, so naturally my brilliant solution was, yeah, let's speed. That'll definitely improve things. Peak decision-making right there. Then I see the blue lights in the mirror, and my stomach just falls through the floor. Now picture it from his side. Big black guy, tinted BMW, hauling ass down the road on Christmas. I remember thinking, man, this looks like the opening scene of the world's worst excuse. There was no way this wasn't about to end with a ticket and me explaining to my boss why I was late. I pulled over, apologized, handed everything over, and told him the truth. No dramatic story, no fake emergency, just, I'm late for work because I screwed up. He checked my details, realized I wasn't trying to feed him some bargain bin nonsense, and just looked at me for a second. Then he says, "Follow me." Before I can even process what he means, he flips on the lights, pulls back onto the road, and starts carving a path through traffic. I'm sitting behind a police car getting the world's most official escort because some officer decided Christmas was a good day to cut a guy a little slack. It felt like getting a VIP pass after fully expecting to be kicked out of the concert. I made it to work on time, never forgot the guy, and I still run into him at the local pub every now and then. First beers on me, every single time. Funny how one small act of kindness can stick in your head longer than every speeding ticket you never got. Story 7. Not a cop myself, but my dad was, and this was always one of my favorite stories because it reminded me common sense still exists every once in a while. He pulls over the local ice cream truck after watching the driver roll straight through a stop sign. Pretty routine traffic stop, until he starts checking the paperwork. Driver's license had expired. The permits for the truck hadn't been renewed for the summer either. On paper, my dad could have stacked tickets like pancakes and basically wiped out the guy's entire season before he'd sold enough popsicles to pay for the gas. Instead, he looked at the driver, who was already wearing that, "Yep, my life's about to get expensive" expression, and said, "You've got 2 weeks. Get everything fixed." That was it. No grand speech, no Hollywood moment, just a little discretion and a deadline. The guy actually followed through, got the license renewed, fixed every permit, and finished the summer legally. Then, right before the season ended, he showed up at our house with 4 gigantic boxes of ice cream as a thank you. I mean, gigantic. My freezer looked like a convenience store had exploded. There were screwballs, rocket pops, fudge bars, you name it. Every time you opened the freezer, it looked like childhood was staring back at you. I'm pretty sure I ate enough screwballs that summer to permanently replace my bloodstream with blue raspberry syrup. Best part is, my dad never expected anything in return. He just figured ruining someone's livelihood over paperwork they could actually fix wasn't the goal. Sometimes the coolest thing a cop can do isn't letting someone off because the story's funny. It's realizing the lesson already landed before the ticket ever would. Story 8. Not a cop, but my mom got pulled over one Christmas for a busted taillight, and she was already halfway to the shop to get it fixed. You know that feeling when you see the flashing lights and your brain instantly starts calculating how much this mistake is about to cost? Yeah. She was already mentally writing the check before the officer even got to the window. The cop walks up, looks at her for a second, smiles, and says, "Pick a hand." That's it. No lecture. No, "Do you know why I stopped you?" Just, pick a hand. My mom's sitting there completely confused, probably wondering if she'd accidentally wandered into some low-budget magic show. She points to one hand, and the officer opens it, hands her a little card that just says, "Merry Christmas," wishes her a good holiday, reminds her to get the taillight fixed, and heads back to his cruiser. No ticket, no warning slip, just a Christmas card. It's such a tiny thing, but that's why it sticks with me. Most traffic stops are about as fun as stepping on a Lego barefoot. This one turned into a story our family still tells years later. Sometimes a little kindness lands harder than a citation ever could. My mom got her taillight fixed, the officer got to brighten somebody's day, and somewhere out there is probably a guy whose annual Christmas tradition involved carrying a stack of greeting cards instead of a stack of tickets. Honestly, that's pretty cool. Story 9. A buddy of mine works patrol in Berlin, and he told me about a domestic violence call that completely derailed everyone's expectations. Neighbors reported a husband beating his wife, so they roll in expecting the usual nightmare. Instead, they open the door and find the woman's son absolutely dismantling his stepdad. The guy's trying to swing back, but every punch he throws looks like a Windows computer begging for an update. Slow, frozen, and way too late. The weird part wasn't even that the son was winning. It was how deliberate he was. Every shot landed everywhere except the face. My partner actually asked him later why he kept avoiding it, figuring maybe he knew some martial arts or something. Nope. Kid just shrugs and says, "Didn't want to knock him out. I wanted this to last. Besides, he never hit my mom where other people could see the bruises." That answer hit the room like someone yanked the emergency brake. All the sarcastic cop chatter just vanished. You could practically hear everyone's brain rebooting. It wasn't some action movie one-liner. It was years of bottled-up anger squeezed into one sentence that landed harder than anything else that happened in that apartment. We still separated everyone, arrested the people we had to, and let the courts sort it out. That's the job. But every once in a while, you hear something that sticks in your head like a splinter. Not because it was clever, because it reminded you that sometimes the ugliest part of a scene isn't what you walk into. It's realizing how long it had probably been going on before anyone finally called. Story 10. Not a cop, but we had this campus police officer who was honestly one of the strangest dudes I've ever met. We'd be hanging out at the picnic tables after class, acting like the world's least productive study group, and he'd wander over just to chat. Never hovered, never tried to play undercover detective. He'd just lean against the table, shoot the breeze, and say he liked the vibe because everyone was relaxed and cracking dumb jokes instead of causing headaches. His logic was pretty simple. While the rest of campus was treating Friday night like a demolition derby fueled by cheap booze, our little corner was mostly people arguing about movies, laughing at absolutely nothing, and convincing ourselves someone should definitely order pizza. College logic is basically a browser with 47 tabs open and music playing from one of them. You've got no clue where it's coming from, but somehow everybody's okay with it. Looking back, the school was liberal as hell, especially for Northeast Pennsylvania 12 years ago. They seemed way more interested in breaking up underage drinking parties where people were flipping trash cans and testing the structural integrity of dorm walls. That got attention fast. Our group, we were mostly just existing loudly in one spot without turning campus into a disaster zone. That said, I know that's just one random college story. I'm way more curious what actual cops have seen that made them stop and think, well, that's definitely not what I expected today. That's all for today's stories. If you enjoyed hanging out, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your own story in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.